because you're too worried about what you think other people think about you. And you don't want them to judge you. But here's what I know about them. And here's what I know about you. It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to judge you anyway. What if I told you that your biggest problem in your quest for success is small? And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, boy or girl, black or white, rich or poor, entrepreneur or employee, your biggest problem in your success quest is very, very small. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you about this concept. Why big thinking, or why thinking big, is the missing piece in your success puzzle. I've coached a lot of entrepreneurs, and I've seen some people who've had billion-dollar businesses in their hands, and they barely eke out hundreds of thousands of dollars. And for decades, I've asked, why? Why is this person who has this much opportunity right in front of them, they have this much skill set, like the marketplace is ripe for the thing that they have, and yet they're only making a couple $100,000 a year? Now, and I get it, like a couple $100,000 a year. How many of you honestly, and for those of you on YouTube, you can just type me in the chat or in the comments, but for many of you in this room, honestly would say, like, I think about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That does not seem very small to me. Wave at me, my peeps. That doesn't seem very small. Right. But I submit to you that that's your problem.
Doesn't.
Because, like, small to you seems big. And big seems impossible. And so, since big is impossible, you don't even try. Like, you give up before you get started. And I'm not fussing at y'all. I'm just telling you, like, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. I see this all the time. I see people with businesses, and they're eking out like a meager existence. I'm thinking, what is with the struggle fest? And the reality is, I can't think any bigger than this. And then I see people who have what from my perception seems like a terrible idea, a terrible business model. It's like, I would never build a business around this, and they're making a fortune. I mean, millions off of what to me seems like a terrible idea. And the reason they're doing it is because their ability to think big around their concept, their business model, their market, their pricing, their ability to think big around those things is greater than the person with a better idea's ability to think big around their great thing that they have. I mean, imagine you're the children of Israel, you're slaves in a foreign land. And imagine the king that you're a slave to is the mightiest king on earth. And imagine God frees you from this king and transfers all of that nation's wealth to you. He opens the Red Sea. You march across on dry ground. You send spies into the promised land. 12 spies, 10 of them come back with bad news, 2 of them come back with great news. The 10 that came back with bad news said, yeah, the land flows with milk and honey, and yes, the grapes are as big as your head, but the giants are so big, we are as grasshoppers in their sight. No, you're not as grasshoppers in their sight, you're as grasshoppers in your own sight. And Joshua and Caleb said, yeah, the giants are big, but God is bigger. And see, your problem, I promise you, the biggest problem you have on your success quest is your inability to allow yourself over a sustained period of time to think bigger. Because I was thinking about it. I was like, how in the world? How in the world, me, little old Myron, how in the world am I doing all this? And I'm not flexing. I'm gonna be honest with you. I remember in the 10th grade, I went to see my guidance counselor, Mr. Schmitz, William Penn High School. He gave me a prophecy on my life. He said, son, you are going to jail. Right? My report cards would have told you that I'm not smart. My guidance counselor told me I was going to jail. When I graduated from high school, I got the most likely to get on your nerves award. And here I am. And if our business on average generates less than $30,000 in a day, it wasn't a very profitable day. 365 days a year for years and years on end. By the way, that's not a lot of money. It is a lot of money. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. I'm saying I can't afford, if I'm on a quest to maximize my potential in every area of my life, to think that I'm making a lot of money. It's not about me making you think that I don't think that's a lot of money. I don't really care what you think about that being a lot of money. You can think it's a lot of money if you want to. I can't afford to think that. Why? Because if I do, then I'll get complacent. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but how much is enough, Myron? It doesn't have anything to do with it. Like I have plenty enough right now to never have to work another day in my life. I don't need to be here right now. I'm not doing this because I need the money. So if I don't need the money and I don't need to do it, see, here's what thinking small does. Thinking small makes people say, well, when I get X amount of dollars, then I can stop working. Which shows you, me, and the world that you don't even understand the purpose of work. And so I'm going to answer the question, how much is enough? Because somebody in my family said to me one time, when I told him how good my business was doing, and it wasn't doing anywhere near as good then as it's doing now. It's like, well, how much money do you need to make, Myron? How much money do you want to make, Myron? I said, as much as I can. You know what he said to me? He said, surely you can't mean that. I said, surely I do. I said, now, if you said it, you might not mean it, but if I said it, you can take it to the bank. I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And I know there are people who are watching me on YouTube right now who you're going to think, oh my goodness, that's such a terrible thing to say. I get it. You're confused, but that's okay. I'm going to allow you to be confused. I'm not confused. And I'm not running for office, so I don't have to give you an answer that's acceptable to you. This is what's going on in my head. I don't need anybody to think anything about me. I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And I asked him, I said, how much money do you want to make? He said, not that much. I'm not that greedy. See, which is fine. No, that's fine. That's fine. But here's the problem with that. That's part of your small thinking mechanism. And that's how you protect yourself from being the best you can be. So if I asked you this question, how long do you want to live? You wouldn't say not that long, just long enough to be comfortable. Would you? Who would say that? How healthy do you want to be? I don't want to be that healthy, just healthy enough to be comfortable. Nobody would say that. It sounds so ridiculous, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound ridiculous? How smart would you like your children to be? Not that smart, just smart enough to be comfortable. How good do you want your relationships to be? I don't want to be that good, just good enough to be comfortable. We don't say that about any other area of our lives other than money. Why? Is that a good question? Why is money the only arena in our lives where we set a limit to just enough to be comfortable? You want to max out every other area of your life, but the money I don't want to. You know why? Because you're too worried about what you think other people think about you. And you don't want them to judge you. But here's what I know about them. And here's what I know about you. It doesn't matter what you say, they're going to judge you anyway. I wish I had some helping hand. And since they're going to judge you anyway, you might as well just go ahead and live your life. Like I don't have time. Somebody here. So I'm sure somebody will put a comment in here. But the Bible says that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. It does say that. But that's not all it says. And whatever that means, it doesn't contradict the rest of the entire Bible. Whatever it means. It doesn't contradict the blessing of the Lord that maketh rich and he hath no sorrow with it. Doesn't contradict that. So how do those two verses coexist in the same text? Here's how they coexist. They coexist in the same text by reading and studying them in context. What does that mean? I got to look at the verses before it and the verses after, and I got to look up the definition of all the words in the verses so that I can understand that when the Bible says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, it's talking about an actual camel and an actual needle. But the key word in that verse is the word rich. But instead of me teaching that part to you right now, I'll say, go watch my video on the camel and the eye of the needle and explain it to you perfectly. One of these days, in the very near future, I'm going to do a video on the fact the Bible teaches the love of money is the root of all evil. And I mean, these are misunderstood passages in Scripture because people lift the verses out of the context in which they were written, and then they attempt to understand them. You cannot understand them apart from the context. It means those verses are in there and they're true, but they're not telling us all of a sudden that God wants us to be broke. Yeah, I'm going to bless you, but I want you to be broke. God's not bipolar just because we are. Okay. So, when you think small, you only see small opportunities. And you only take advantage of small opportunities. And by the way, here's our process. Here's our process. When we think small, what we do is, the first thing we do is we look at a situation and we say, can I? And when I say can I might be saying, can I afford it? I might be saying, like, can I do it? Like, do I have the ability to do it? Like, can I capability-wise? Like, can I? This is what small thinking says, can I? And then when you ask this question, what do you have to find? You ask the question to find what? An answer. And then most people come back. If the thing looks bigger than you, you say, I can't. Small thinking. Big thinking. How? How can I? Big thinking just asks better questions. Guess what happens when you say, how can I? Then you start making a list. Well, I could do this, or I could do that, I could do that, I could do this, I could do this. You have to learn to put up a fight against the small thinking sabotage mechanism in your mind that talks you out of all your chances. Yeah. Is this helping anybody besides me? So you, instead of saying, can I afford it? Can I do it in the amount of time I have left? Can I do it? Will people accept me? Can I do it? Will people judge me? Can I do it? Will people laugh at me if I say this one? No, just how can I do it? How can I? 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 Okay, how can I? How can I afford it? Okay, how can I make the time? How can I find the people that I can partner with? How can I? I ask better questions, I get better answers. But the only way to get better answers is to ask better questions. How many of y'all tracking?
Oh, yes.
And so small thinking is, so what happens, you only see small opportunities. And when you only see small opportunities, then you look at, in fact, I'm going to go to another page. So here's what happens when I only see small opportunities. I look at me in the mirror, and then I think of me as small. I won't say that out loud, but it's how I feel, right? And how can you tell if you think you're small? When you look at something and you think it's too big for you, then you think you're small. When you look at something, and you say, well, I can't do that because I don't know how to, blah, blah, blah. And you say that as if that statement of current fact is eternal. Like, you didn't know how to walk when you landed on this planet, but you figured it out. Couldn't talk either. Count, read, drive, ride a bike. Look at all this. I always tell people, if you want proof that there's nothing you can't learn, Just look in the rearview mirror of your life at all the things you've already learned. And that should let you know there's nothing you can't learn. Because whatever the thing is you're facing, you've already learned how to do a whole lot of other stuff that's way harder than that. Especially living in the age we live in now, where there's all this technology to help you figure it out. Is what I'm saying making sense? And so you look at yourself, you look at me, I'm small, and then you look at the market, and the market's small. So there are all these people in this market, and you're like, the market's just not that big. There aren't that many people who want it. And so before you even write the book, create the course, launch the software, create the membership site, whatever, you build your YouTube channel, your Instagram profile, your TikTok following, your TikTok shop, your Amazon influencer account, before you take advantage of all of these opportunities that we have available today, because there's never been a time in human history where it's been easier to create wealth than right now. But it doesn't feel like it, because the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism has programmed you to believe that you are smaller than all your chances. And so you look at the market, well, the market's not that big. I started out in what you would think is a small market. Like when I started training, the only thing I knew was network marketing and sales. So I started training network marketers. And I thought and I thought I was making big money. Like I'd go do a seminar for some network marketers and I'd make $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a Saturday morning teaching network marketers how to do network marketing. Now, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. And then sometimes then I'd started teaching people how to sell. And I'd made even more money. And so I wrote a book and I'd sell lots of books. And once I figured out how to sell lots of books, I started teaching people how to write books and sell books. And I'd develop a skill and then I'd figure out how to do it. And then I'd create a course to teach other people how to do it. And I'd sell it to people. And guess what I discovered? There's a big market. But guess what? I knew there was a big market of people with small amounts of money. But because my thinking was small, my income, though it was big, was smaller than it needed to be because my prices were small, because the only people that I could perceive in the marketplace were people who could afford a $500 course. See, that hit you, didn't it? And see, so the average person would look out and say, well, it's this way. No, it's not that way. You're that way. And I know because I used to be that way. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. And so when I look at the opportunities don't look that large, that immense, because like if it was immense, it'd be obviously for somebody other than me. How could that immense opportunity be for me? You know what happened? I had a breakthrough. I went to a Robert Allen wealth retreat, and I had already read a bunch of his books, Multiple Streams of Internet Income, The 1 Minute Millionaire. I had already interviewed him for his 1 Minute Millionaire book for my newspaper that I launched. I launched a newspaper that it was so crazy. A 4-page newspaper, made me so much money. I'll tell you that story in a minute. So I'm at Robert Allen's wealth retreat, and he says, hey, does anybody have a testimony? And I go up, yeah, I've got a testimony. Like, yeah. He calls me up on stage. I'm like, yeah, man, I read your book, Multiple Streams of Income. I listened to your 6 CD series called Infopreneuring, and I did all the stuff you said. He said, and I said, my expenses are only like $5,000 a month, and I make $30,000 a month, and I live like a king. You know what he said? He said, wow, you're on the verge of a breakthrough. You're about to break through to really big money. And I'm on stage in front of 700 people. And I thought to myself, did he just diss my $30,000 a month in front of 700 people? That was my first thought. That was my first small thinking thought. My second small thinking thought was, wait, there's a level where $30,000 a month is not that much money? That would have never occurred to me had that not happened. Are y'all tracking? Well, I had something happen like that recently to me again. Right? I remember my wife and I, we went to see we were having dinner with my wife's brother's in-laws, his father-in-law, mother-in-law, and they were in the cattle business. They were like, yeah, we bought these cows for $5,000 and they had calves, and then we took them to the market and we sold them for $7,000. And they were talking about $5,000 and $7,000. This is way back in the day. This is back in the 90s, back before $20,000 a month ever entered my brain, right? And they were talking about $5,000 like it was $5. And when we left, I said, did you notice how they were talking about $5,000 like it was $5? She's like, yeah. I was like, oh. And so it made me realize there are levels to this game. And see, a lot of times what happens when people who are a little bit further than you on their financial journey, when they're talking about numbers that are just normal numbers to them, you think they're flexing. When they're just experiencing life the way they're experiencing life. Like to me, I've got students that we've helped have $1 million days. So to me, $1 million in a day is not flex. There's nothing flex about. I mean, 5 million, okay, maybe a little flexish, right? But it's a different way of thinking. When you expose yourself to people who think bigger, their big thinking is one of the only ways that you can see how small your thinking has been. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So you see your market is small, and then you see the money is small. What does that mean? Well, you think the market's small, there's only a handful of people in this market, and they can only afford a little bit of money. So you don't even put a dollar sign, you just put a cent sign. They can't afford that much money, so I only charge them a little bit of money. So little old me goes to my little old market, I charge a little bit of money, and I wonder why I can't get ahead. The reason you can't get ahead, the reason you're struggling on your success quest is because your thinking is too small. By the way, thinking big, like thinking 100 times bigger than you think right now, doesn't cost 100 times more. It costs the same amount of energy. You just have to break the programming that the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism put on you so they can keep their thumb on you your whole life. Okay, cool. So y'all get that. So when you think small, you only see small opportunities, and then you only speak about small opportunities. So when you talk about small opportunities. So here's what we have to understand. Our words are not just a communication tool. Our words are the window through which we see the world. And so if you talk small about small things, then it blinds you to the bigger opportunities. You understand what I'm saying? And so I'm glad that I got exposed to Bill Travis in 1985, who was this jovial old man with a white beard. It's funny because now I'm a jovial, seasoned man with a white beard. Okay, anyway, so I got exposed to Bill Travis in 1985, and he was making $10,000 a month in 1985. And I was like, if this dude's making $10,000 a month, I know I'm fixing to get rich. And then I got exposed to my man Ben Ginder in 1995 in this network marketing company, and he had been in it for a couple of months, and he was making $60,000. I probably shouldn't have said his last name, but back then he makes more than that. So he was making $60,000 a month. Like, and I saw the checks, so I knew this was not theory. It was like check flex in multi-level marketing, right? Check flex. This is how you recruit people. Check flex. And so I'm like, this guy who grew up on a farm, an Amish farm in Pennsylvania, is making $60,000 a month. I know I'm going to get rich. He's one of my dearest friends, one of my best friends, one of my best mentors ever. Anyway, I was in his organization. He would go with me to different places around the country, actually around the world, and we'd go recruit people for my organization. And just watching him operate was different, right? And so you only see small opportunities. And you only speak small, and Ben didn't speak small. Ben lives large. Like, I mean, and he would let me drive his fanciful cars. He'd let me drive his Lamborghini. He let me drive his Aston Martin and his Ferrari. He's like, man, are you going to go or what? I'm like, Ben, I'm already going like 120. Like, come on, man, let's go. I'm like, what are we doing here, bro? Anyway, I was young and dumb. I don't do that anymore. We were both younger and dumber then than we are now. And I remember one time when we were in Jacksonville, Florida, Ben came to Jacksonville, and we were going to do an event, and he was going to do an event with me. And he got to my house, and he came in his Rolls Royce or his Bentley, or his Rolls Royce or his Bentley. I don't remember which one. It was probably his Bentley. I don't remember. Anyway, so he's at my house. It's time for me to pick up my kids to school. I said, I got to get my kids from school. He said, well, let's go. And so he rolls up in his Bentley and picks up my kids from school. This is the coolest thing ever. And just being exposed to people who think bigger changed my life in ways that I didn't think about until I started thinking about it now, right? And so I stopped talking about small things. I mean, to the point where I loathe small talk. Like, I hate it. It's like, small talk for me is like fingernails on a chalkboard. I don't want to talk about what happened in the news. I can't do anything about it. But Myron, how will you know what's going on in the world? I got a good question for you. That's a good question. Let me ask you a better question. You can't fix what's going on in your world. What are you going to do about the problems going on in the B world? Why are you watching the bad news? Why would you fill your mind with a bunch of problems that you have no ability to solve, that rob your brain power of the energy to solve the problems you can solve? Read the paper? Watch the news? For what? That's time you could be learning a new skill. Anyway, not going to go there. So being around people who think bigger causes you to think bigger. And so I recently I've got this new friend. He's a billionaire, and I'm not going to say his name. And we're having a conversation. And well, the first time I ever met him, he had this conversation, and he talked about how he got a government contract in New York. And with that government contract, he made like $400 million in 2 weeks. I'm like, I know it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. Oh, boy, why you got to do that to me? Right? Why you got to come out like that? I'm like, I've never made $400 million in 2 weeks, but now at least I know someone who has, which means, if my dad was right, if they can do it, you can do it. So this guy took a liking to me, and I took a liking to him. He's a really nice guy, and I'm fairly nice sometimes. And so he came to Tampa. We spent the day together, and he just like peeled back the curtains. And a couple of things he said to me made me realize how small my big thinking was. And he said, Myron, my family's business did $37 billion last year. And he said, so when he came to Tampa, I chartered a yacht. We sailed from Tampa to St. Pete, ate lunch at Doc Ford's, sailed back. On the way there, he told me his story. On the way back, I told him mine. And he said, I haven't paid taxes since 2001. He said, and we don't break any of the rules. We just use the rules that were made in our favor. I'm like, sign me up for a whole bunch of that right there. And then on the way back, I told him my story. Here's what he said to me. He said, Myron, you're doing really, really good. Your story is amazing. But you could do so much better. Bring it. Bring it. Here's what he said. He said, if you do what I tell you to do, you should be able to accumulate $300 million worth of real estate in the next 6 months. Now, I'm a big thinker. $300 million, Tim? And I'm like, where am I going to get $300 million? That's my first little squeaky voice, self-sabotaging, small thinking brain coming out. Where are you going to get $300 million? And the beautiful part is, it doesn't matter. One of the biggest things that keeps people in small thinking is asking, how do I do this? Instead of deciding, I'm going to do this. Because some, like big things, sometimes you don't get to see the whole picture up front. You only get to see the first step. And you only get to see the second step after you take the first step. So I'm studying all the stuff he showed me. Then I went to Miami and spent the day with him again. So if you only see small opportunities and you only speak about small opportunities, because I see some people's businesses. I've got one client, and she is one of the hardest. She does really well with her money. She makes millions of dollars a year, but she's always working. She's always on call, always on the phone. I'm like, I don't want to make money that bad. I don't personally. I don't like I'm not on around the clock. I'm on when I'm on, and when I'm off, leave me alone. Keeping it real. And one of the reasons she works all the time is because all of her prices are low. Her prices are too low. So when you only see small opportunities, you only speak about small opportunities, then you can only seize small opportunities. And one of the reasons, I promise, one of the reasons you're struggling right now is because you are thinking too small. And exposing yourself to people who think bigger so that you can start to exercise your atrophied big thinking muscles is one of the most important things you can do. More important than learning how to do a thing is learning how to become the person who can do it. Because if you learn how to become the person who can do it, you will figure out the how. How many of y'all tracking? Wave at me. And that's why I say small is your biggest problem. And big thinking is the missing piece to your success puzzle. So now that you know what the piece is, here's my question for you. Are you going to put the puzzle together? Or are you just going to sit there and look at the box? Thanks for watching. I hope this video helps you. Stay blessed by the best, and we'll see you in the next video. So as human beings, it's very difficult for us to experience in the realm of time anything other than the past or the future, unless we're praying or meditating on the Word of God. Why? Because what we're doing is we're unplugging from the now and then, and we're getting plugged into the forever now. In this video, you are going to learn how to become the best of the best in your arena. I'm talking about the Michael Jordan, the Kobe Bryant, the Bruce Lee, the Michael Jackson of your arena that you are in. At least you're going to learn what it takes, even if you're not willing to do it. In this video, we're going to talk about how to be the best. Like, I don't know if you study people who are the best at what they do, but I study people who are the best at what they do. And I'm like, what makes this person so different? And I hate to beat a dead horse, but clearly the horse is not completely dead, so we're going to beat it a little more today. The principle of be, do, have is, in my opinion, the ultimate success principle. I've got videos where I talked about it, and I'm going to talk about it again because there are so many layers of truth in this concept of be, do, have. It's just like if you learn how to look, you will see it everywhere. And the first thing God ever said to man when he made man in Genesis chapter 1, the first thing he ever said was, be fruitful and multiply. Well, when he said multiply, the verb is not announced, it's implied. What does that mean? Like, you wouldn't say be fruitful and be multiply. That doesn't make any sense. And be dominion, that doesn't make any sense. He said be fruitful and multiply. What's the implied verb? The implied verb is do. Multiply is something you do. Be fruitful. But fruitfulness is something that you be. Be fruitful. Do multiply. Do replenish the earth. Do subdue it. And then have dominion. So he said be, do, have. That's so magnificently beautiful if you understand what it means. I'm gonna illustrate some of the stuff I'm talking about on my digital blackboard today. But before I do, let's just really settle into this whole idea and ask ourselves the question: have I become the person who can do the thing so I can have the stuff? Or am I one of those delusional people who desires to have something for which I've not yet done the thing that's required? Or have I been one of those people who've been attempting to do the thing that's required that I'm not yet able to do because I've not yet become the person? That's the question. So when you become the person who can do the thing, what you have will change automatically. See, we bought into this idea our whole lives. We've been told if what you're doing isn't working, try harder. Not only is that not a good idea, that's some of the worst advice that could possibly exist. Do more, put more effort, energy, and time into what's already proven not to work. How does that make sense? It doesn't seem to make sense to me. And so I'm going to give us a different perspective because we're going to do a deep dive on Be, Do, Have, because becoming the best version of yourself is the way you can get to the point where you can do the things that serve the world the best so you can have the best of the things you seek to have. It's like there's nothing missing here. Even when I think about the nature of the economy that God set up in Genesis chapter 1. When God made man, where did he put him? He put him in what? In a bakery? In a garden. So you mean that was the economic infrastructure of the world. It was a garden. Why? Because God's ideal environment for man is a garden. It's a place where things grow. It's not like a bakery where consumption creates lack. We talk about the economic pie as if it's actually a thing, but there's no economic pie. You don't have to have less. The whole economic pie theory infers that in order for you to have more, I have to have less. In order for me to have more, you have to have less. In order for one person to have more, everybody else has to have less. So what it infers and implies is that the lack that people experience is the result of the abundance that other people experience. And the abundance that people experience is because they've created lack in the life of somebody else. That's not only inaccurate, it's actually a lie that's very well crafted, but it's the inversion of the truth. So there's no economic pie. God put man in a garden. Watch this. In a garden, consumption creates the opportunity for production. What does that mean? If I eat an apple, what do I expose? I expose the seeds. Now, does an apple only have one seed? So one apple has multiple seeds. Let's say it has 5 seeds, 6 seeds. So one apple, if I eat it, can grow 6 trees. So my consumption created the opportunity for production. So I don't have to be afraid to consume as long as I'm willing to produce based on the byproduct of my consumption. Is what I'm saying making a little bit of sense? Okay, but what happens when I plant the seed in the ground? The seed becomes a root system, right? God said, be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so let's start there. Fruitful. What is a fruit? Well, it tells us what a fruit is. What's a fruit? A fruit is a living organism whose seed is in itself. Oh, so the potential, because a seed is not a tree. A seed is a potential tree. So the potential to become more than it is and produce more of what it is inside the thing that it is. But I've got to plant the seed. So when God says be fruitful, what's he saying? He's saying make sure you produce on the outside based on what I put on the inside of you. And I put something special on the inside of each and every one of you because God put an aspect of his creativity inside of each of us. He didn't put all of his creativity inside of any of us, but he put an aspect of his creativity inside of each of us. My job is to make sure that what God put inside of me shows up outside of me so that they can see my good works and glorify who? My Father, which is in heaven. This is so powerful if you get it, right? If you begin to see life through this be, do, have lens, like you'll find the answers. Like most people are struggling to do what? Have more of something. And they find the struggle in the having.
Yes.
Can I get a witness? They find the struggle in the having, and then they learn a new thing. They see somebody do a thing that seems to cause them to have a thing. And so since they desire to have the thing that the person who's doing the thing has, they say, I'm going to do what that person's doing. But you can't do what that person's doing because the aspect of God's creativity he put inside of them, he didn't put inside of you. You have to do something with the seed God put inside of you. Now, it's easy when I look at Bertrand, for instance, when I look at you, it's easy for me to see that the gift God gave you is valuable. But it's hard for me to see that the seed God gave me is valuable. Maybe that's because the only person our eyes can't see is us. Well, what if the truth was the only people our mind can't see is us? We value everybody else's gift, we value everybody else's talent, and we devalue ours in the same breath. If I could sing like so-and-so, if I could talk like so-and-so, if I could write like this person, or dance like that person, or sing like this person, or play music like that person, or paint like this person, or if I knew business like that person, then I could. Well, the reality is now you can, but you only can if you can see the treasure that you have. You do remember the story about the widow in 2 Kings chapter 4, don't you? She comes to Elisha crying. My husband died. They had to go get my kid. I don't know what I'm doing. Elisha said, what you want me to do about it? What kind of question is that for a preacher to ask? Preacher's supposed to say, oh, poor thing. He didn't say that. He said, what do you want me to do about it? He said, what shall I do for thee? He said, tell me, what hast thou in the house? What's he saying? When he said, what shall I do for thee? He's saying, learn to expect more from yourself than you do from other people. We expect the government to fix our problem. We expect our parents. We expect our spouse. We expect our children. We expect our teachers. We expect our churches. We expect our communities. We expect someone outside ourselves to fix the problem that exists because we refuse to produce based on what God put in ourselves. I wish I had some help in here. Oh, Lord. And the reality is, the answer's been there all the time. He said, what do you have in the house? You know what she said? The same thing you say. The same thing I said for decades. Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house except. Whatever the thing is that comes after the except, that's the thing you're supposed to use. I don't know how to do anything but cook. You can't make any money cooking. Really? Tell that to Rachel Ray. She's a millionaire with an M. She turned the camera on cooking. My brother, Derek, I got to tell you, this guy gets more joy out of cooking and talking about food than anybody I've ever seen. Oh, no, he cooks. And he doesn't, but when he makes something, he's not content to make it. He has to tell you what he made, why he made it, how he made it, every step in the process of what he did. And even if you don't care, you're going to enjoy watching him talk about it. I told him, I said, bro, if you start a YouTube channel where you make food and describe the food like you do when you're talking to us, you will have millions of subscribers. Millions. Anyway, the thing that God put inside of you is valuable, but you're calling it nothing. You're calling it nothing but. You're calling it nothing except. You're saying all I know how to do is X. I'm only good at Y. You missed the point. The reason God made you bad at what you are bad at is so you don't get distracted by focusing on something that's not what you're good at. I had polio as an infant. It's one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. It was also one of the worst things that ever happened to me in my life. I mean, it could have killed me. But it didn't kill me. It just killed the nerves in my spine that control my left leg. And my left leg didn't develop as fast as the rest of me. And I walk with a brace on my leg. And when I at night, when I'm at home and I'm in my robe and my pajamas, I don't walk with a brace. I walk with crutches. And that is just so bad, Myron. I feel sorry for you. Baby, don't feel sorry for me. I'm all right. I'm all right. You're going to have to worry about somebody, but it ain't going to be me. And as a child, I hated the fact that I couldn't run. I'm very competitive. I'm not now, but I was when I was a child. I was very competitive. I'm not competitive at all now because now I realize I have no competition. But when I was a child, I was competitive. Oh, you don't have any competition either. Let's don't be confused about it. Don't let that hit you the wrong way. Like, I don't have any competition, but neither do you. You are the one and only. There's nobody else who's ever existed on planet Earth who can fulfill your assignment. How could you possibly have competition? But you see, the difference between you and me is I own the fact that I don't have any competition. You can own it. You can own the fact that you don't have any, if you will. Anyway, that's a different conversation for another day. And so, but I didn't hate the fact that my brothers could run. My brother Jeff was so athletic and talented. It didn't matter what sport he played, he was great at it. My brother Mike did so great in school. Like, clearly he was smarter than the rest of us. Rob could draw, but all of them could run. We played basketball. And we played basketball like half-court basketball, and we just play. And I'd play basketball, but I wasn't good at it. We played sandlot football, flag football. Some of the people wondering, what's sandlot football? You got to come to Florida. If you got to be a Floridian to know about sandlot football, right? And I'll knock a person down now. I play football, but I couldn't run. I wasn't going to run the ball. I'll play defense. I'll play tackle. I'll knock you behind on the ground. Like, I'd play baseball, but somebody'd have to run for me. And I hated that. If we played kickball on the playground, I always got chosen last. I hated that. But I realized as an adult that it's one of the greatest gifts God ever ordained for me to receive. Because what Satan used as oppression and affliction in my body, God used as a gift. Why? God ordained in his sovereign wisdom before the foundation of the world that my body would be slowed down so my mind could speed up. I'm so grateful for that. So, you have a gift that you're undervaluing. How do I know? Because I undervalued mine. And I wanted the gifts that other people had. But when I was a child, what does the scripture say? When I became a man, I put away childish things. What else does it say? They that compare themselves among themselves, measuring themselves by themselves, are not wise. I don't have to compare myself to you. You don't have to compare yourself to me. Why? I don't have your assignment. You don't have mine. I can celebrate you. You can celebrate me. And neither one of us has to be jealous of each other. Wow, how cool is that? Myron, so-and-so's channel is bigger than yours. I know. They've been doing it longer. Or they're better at it. Either way, I'm okay. And I'll watch their channel till the cows come home if it's something that interests me. Why? I'm not in a race with them. I have one assignment. Be the best version of myself. Whatsoever my hand finds to do it with my might. Why? Because I'm going to die. So I got to do it while I'm alive because there's no work, there's no device, there's no service, there's none of that in the grave where I'm going. So I got to get it done while I'm alive. And if all I do is prepare and get ready, and I don't ever get into the game because I think I can't win the game, I've already lost the game because the only thing I have to do to win the game is get in the game and play the game. I've already won. This is so good. So, what is the thing that separates all of those greats? And when I say they're great, the fact that they're great doesn't necessarily mean they're good people. You may consider some of those people I named not to be good people. I mean, Alexander the Great wasn't a good dude, but he was Alexander. He wasn't Alexander the mediocre. He wasn't Alexander he wasn't another dude named Alexander. He was Alexander the Great, not Alexander a Great. Why? Because he owned his identity and he added to his identity a level of intentionality that most people are unwilling to discipline themselves to do. So I'm going to show you the formula for how to be like the best of the best in the thing you were put here to do. Like, nobody else can compete with you. Here's what's sad. You can become the best version of yourself, and you just become a version of yourself. Why would you settle for that? Why? Oh, because you don't know how great you are. Well, let's fix that, or at least get started on it. So, we're going to look at B. Do. Have. This is so cool. And actually, you know what we're going to do? Let's do it backwards. Let's do it the other way. Let's do be. And then we'll do. And then we'll do have. Now we're not doing it the same way we've done it in the past. And there's a reason I'm doing it this way. Okay, be, do, have. This is the formula for success. This is the ascension to being the best. B speaks to my identity. One of the biggest problems you face in your life is you don't know who you are. It's one of the biggest problems you face. Do you understand you will never behave in a way that's inconsistent with how you perceive your identity? So that's why you have to be hyper intentional about where you get your identity from. Most people get their identity from lidentity. What is lidentity? Lidentity is your notness. Your what? Your notness. You say notness is not a word. It wasn't until I just said it. It's one now. What is notness? Notness is all the things that all the people, all your life, told you and showed you you are not. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not tall enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not handsome enough. You're not strong enough. You're not educated enough. Who you are is not enough, is your identity. And man, you thought they could see you. The reason they gave you an identity is because they can't even see themselves. How could you expect them to see you? They gave you a identity because they felt so insecure, they had to make you feel smaller in order for them to feel bigger. Do you know why children make fun of other children? Because the children who are making fun feel insecure. And they think that making somebody else feel worse will make them feel better. But it doesn't work. For this, like, God didn't he didn't just skip steps when he made you. I'm not going to give them everything they need for their assignment. So, and so what most people do is they will attempt to overcome their identity with what I call my identity. What's a my identity? A my identity is a fake identity that you make up. That's better than the identity, but it's still not your identity. This is so powerful when you get it. So you go through life attempting to prove to people that you're better than they told you you're not. So the foundation of your my identity is the identity. Your my identity is born out of your identity. So what do I need to do? You need to trash the identity. Stop believing that who you are, that who you're not is more important than who you are. Stop believing that. Stop buying that lie. Stop making up some fake identity to prove, putting fake posts on fake social media profiles so you can be as fake as everybody else on the platform. Just be who you are, and trust that who you are is more than enough for you to be able to do more than enough, for you to be able to have more than enough. Now, where am I going to get my identity from? The only place you can get your true identity from is from the ultimate identity, which is who? God. The I am that I am. That's such a fascinating and powerful. Those two words, I don't know that there are two words in the English language that are more powerful than I am, which is why it's absolutely imperative to never insert an identity after I am. I am so stupid. I am not good enough. I am not rich enough. I am poor. I am weak. I am sick. What are you doing? What you're doing is, if you think about I am it's a very present identity. In fact, what does it say in Psalm 46? Psalm 46 says, the Lord is our refuge and our strength, a very what? Present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear though the earth be removed. Present help. Well, it's hard for us as human beings to experience present. Why? Because as soon as I say now, it becomes then. Now then. You can't say now fast enough for it to remain now. So as human beings, it's very difficult for us to experience in the realm of time anything other than the past or the future unless we're praying or meditating on the Word of God. Why? Because what we're doing is we're unplugging from the now and then, and we're getting plugged into the forever now. Because think about I am as an identity. I am means that I'm not I was. It means that I'm not I will be. It means that I am, and I'm not just I am that I am. What I am that I am, who is mighty, who is powerful, who is love, who is omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. I am that I am. So if you get your identity from him, from I am that I am, then you know who you are. When you know who you are, you don't have to prove it. You can just walk in it. I'm telling you, real freedom is, I have nothing to lose, I have nothing to gain, I have nothing to hide, I have nothing to prove. Thank you for remembering what I said, because I couldn't remember. I got some help from the front row, right? And so, like, that's freedom. That's when you know who you are. You're no longer attempting to be better than somebody else or better than somebody else told you you're not. You're just being who you are and letting that be enough. How do you do that? It's okay. Can I give you permission to do something that God already gave you permission to do? Can I tell you something? I'm not even going to give you permission. Can I tell you something God gave you permission to do when he made you? He gave you permission to be yourself and be okay with it. Stop attempting to be a version of yourself that deletes your identity. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. If you are intentional, you will be misunderstood. Period. And you have to be okay with being misunderstood. I know I'm misunderstood. Like, I've been called so many things. I've been called a false prophet, prosperity gospel preacher. I've been called the Antichrist. Me, the Antichrist, on more than one occasion. Oh yeah. Con artist, scam clause. I've been called a lot of. But you know what? I don't even have time to respond. I don't have time to care. You can literally believe whatever about me and you're going to do that anyway. So I might as well own my identity. I might as well operate like I am who God says I am, and I know it, instead of pretending that I need to overcome somebody else's delusion. I'm telling you, when you get this part down, identity is fire. Now, here's what's really cool. We've been told our whole lives, if the thing you're working on isn't working, try harder. That sounds good until you realize what it really means. You take the thing that you're doing that's not working and put more intensity in it, more intentionality in it. Why would I do that? Like, do more of what's already proven not to be working. I mean, that sounds like it might be feasible, but until you think about it, then it's like, well, that ain't too smart. And I'm not dumb, so I don't think I'm going to do that. Can I give you a scientific formula for improvement? Like total radical transformation? Here it is. If you don't like the output, change the input. Why? Because inputs create outputs. If you don't like the output, change the input. Now, here's what's cool. Identity, like being, is the input for doing. People say, well, you want to be successful, do more X, Y, Z. Can I tell you something? It may be a little bit disheartening, but sometimes I do that. I don't hate to be the bearer. I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but somebody's got to bring it. So everybody is already doing 100% of everything they can do, who they are right now. Don't leave off that last part. Everybody is already doing 100% of everything they can do, who they are right now. What does that mean? That means you will never be able to do more than you are. You will never be able to build more than you've become. Never. Why? Because being is the input for doing. So if you want If you want to increase your doingness, you must increase your beingness. This is so much more powerful than you know. Like, most people go through life totally unaware of who they are. Now, being speaks to my identity, but doing speaks to my activity. Doing speaks to my activity. So I don't have to make myself do activity. I have to make myself become the person who the activity already comes out of. Like, certain activities are going to come out of who you are. In fact, all your activities are going to come out of who you are. So if I focus on filling the gap in my identity, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more later in this video, then I will start doing different activity. And then identity, just like B is the input for do, identity is the input for activity, but activity is the input for, for property. Property is what we have. Being is who I am. Activity is what I do. Property is what I have. Identity is the input for activity. Activity is the input for property. Now, I'm going to tell you how God made us. It's going to blow your mind, maybe. It blew my mind when I saw it. God made us as human beings with an intense desire to have more property, to have better property. Your desire to have a bank account filled with money and your desire to have nice clothes and a nice car and live in a nice house in a nice neighborhood and to take great vacations is a gift from God. If you don't believe me, go read Ecclesiastes. It's a gift from God. God gave you that gift. God gave you the desire to have more stuff so you would yield to doing the things you have to do in order to have it. And then he gave you the desire to do more so you could bump your head on your insufficiency and stub your toe on your inability and become frustrated enough in the fact that you can't do it until you become more. And then you focus on the thing that he cares about most, which is you becoming more than you've been being. You see how this works? This is so beautiful. So like I said, it's the gift from God. People don't think of their desire to have as being a gift from God. We think of our desire to have as a temptation from Satan. We think it's a temptation from the enemy because the word lust is not always used in a negative term. In fact, the scripture says the spirit lusteth against the flesh and the flesh against the spirit. What does that mean? The word lust means desire. Now, if you're desiring, here's what makes lust bad. When you're desiring to have something, but you're unwilling to do the right thing to have it. That's what turns lust into something evil. A desire is evil when you desire to have the outcome, but you're unwilling to do the input. Now, so as we look at our concept of be, do, have, identity, activity, and property, there is a gap in each of these, and the gap is our potential. And so that gap kind of looks like this. If this were our potential, these little circles are our potential, and we're maxed out being all we can be. We're minimized out, we're being nothing we can be. So we got our minimum potential, our maximum potential, our minimum potential in be, do, and have. And most of us, when it comes to our beingness, we are, most of us are right here, and we feel like we're right here. Right. So there's a big gap between where we are and where we think we are, and there's definitely a big gap between where we are and where we could be. By the way, there is no eliminating that gap, because what happens is as you fill in the gap, your capacity gets bigger. So that's why that's why personal development is perpetual, never-ending growth, because you can always be becoming, but you can never become. Does that make sense? You can always be becoming, but you can never become. What does that mean? That means you can never become there because there's no there. The journey itself is the destination. You can always be there's always room for growth. That's what I'm saying. There's always room for growth. And so the question is, if there's a gap in my identity, in other words, there's a difference between who I think I am and who God knows I am, the question then becomes, how do I fill that gap? How do I fill the gap in my identity? And the way I fill the gap in my identity is through a concept I call intentionality. Intentionality. What's intentionality? It's I am producing with a purpose. Right? I'm moving with meaning. Like I'm acting out of awareness. I'm not just doing something. I'm not doing the next thing that comes up. I'm not a squirrel. Right? And suddenly he ran off in every direction at the same time. No! I have to become hyper intentional. I believe that the number one discriminating factor between people who succeed and people who fail, like the distinction, that's a better word than discriminating factor. The number one distinction between people who succeed and people who fail, people who succeed in any arena of life, it doesn't matter if it's sports, it doesn't matter if it's medicine, if it's science, if it's math, if it's education, if it's speaking, if it's singing, it doesn't matter. Business, the number one distinction between people who live on the struggle bus, like they've turned the struggle bus into a motorhome, and people who succeed in a way that seems effortless to those who are outside looking in, is people who succeed. And by the way, let me give you a definition of success. I discovered God's purpose for my life. I developed myself for that purpose, and I deploy myself in that purpose. People who succeed hyper focus on intention and ignore distraction like it doesn't exist. But people who live on the struggle bus, they hyper focus on distraction and ignore intention. Most of the things people who live on the struggle bus focus on most of the time are things that do not move the needle in their favor. So let me define intention and distraction. Intention is anything that I focus on that moves the needle in my favor, that moves the needle in the favor of my purpose, that moves the needle in the favor of my productivity, that moves the needle in the favor of my personal development, that moves the needle in the favor of my profit. Anything that I focus on that moves the needle in my favor, that is intention. Anything that I focus on that does not move the needle in my favor is a distraction. Now, we all have some distraction. Sometimes we have to take seasons where we decompress, right? And what usually happens is we're focused on something different that doesn't matter as much. It's so interesting to me that the Bible says that bodily exercise profiteth little. It doesn't say it profiteth nothing. People say bodily exercise profiteth little. I'm not going to take care of my body because bodily exercise only profiteth little. No, it profiteth little, but it doesn't mean it doesn't profit. And by the way, it gives you the energy physically. It gives you the energy and physical bandwidth to do all the other things that are important, that are more important. Okay, cool. You are with me. So I fill the gap with intentionality. The more intentional I become about becoming more than I've been being. Myron, what does becoming more mean? It actually means becoming more like the God whose image you're made in. That's really what it means. That's what becoming more actually means. I'm becoming more like God. In fact, if you look at the Hebrew word for man, and when I say the Hebrew word for man, I mean the word Adam, which speaks about men and women, right? Aleph, Daled, Mem. The letter Aleph represents God. The letters Daled, Mem spell the word blood. We know the life of the flesh is in the blood, so we're looking at flesh and blood. Right? So what I'm doing when I'm becoming more is I'm making sure the flesh and blood part of me is yielded to the God part of me. And I make sure that the flesh and blood part of me is moving in more in this direction than having the God part of me move in that direction. Becoming, in fact, one of the words, so Hebrew words don't have vowels. So that word could be Adam, it could be Adamah, it could be Adameh, depending on the accents that you put under those letters, right? And so the word Adameh means I will compare myself, or I will become like. And the purpose of being a human is to be becoming more like God. Okay. So all of my activity, here's the thing. If I resolve that I want to have this so much that I am willing to do more of this right here, if I put more energy in this right here and nothing changes, it's because I've ignored this down here. Are y'all tracking? And so what happens is your attempts to do more without becoming more equals frustration. It equals confusion. Like people who live a life of frustration, confusion, it makes you start flip-flopping all the time. Okay, I tried that, it didn't work. I tried this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. Try that. The reason this happens is because you think that the way you fix doing is by doing something different. But the way you fix your doingness, like the things you know you ought to be doing but you're not doing, the way you fix that is not by forcing yourself to do them, it's by becoming the person who that's what they do. Y'all tracking?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna cover that in a minute, if y'all let me. Can y'all listen a little faster, please? Okay. So once I increase through intentionality, my ability to become, I become more. What happens is I fill in this gap, but there's still a gap here, and the gap here is still pretty big until I start taking action. But when I start taking action, right? When I start taking action, I set an intention to start acting on some new activities. What happens? What's the first thing that shows up? Disruption. Disruption always follows intention. So what happens is I just begin to take a new action because I become more of me, and I start taking a new action. And what happens when I take that new action is disruption follows intention. And it's like, when I first start working on anything, usually, the more important it is, the more true this is, okay? When I start working on something new, the first work it does is on me, but it doesn't usually work for me out of the gate. Because the doing of the thing, as I start filling the gap here, how do I start increasing the gap because I've become more, I've increased my tenacity down here, because I know it's mine. It's like David wasn't worried about Goliath because he was anointed to be the king, but he was still a shepherd. So he knew he had not yet fulfilled his destiny. He knew Goliath couldn't hurt him because his purpose had not yet been fulfilled. Are y'all tracking? And so Joseph had the perspective that the things his brothers did to him, the things Potiphar's wife did to him, the fact that he was in prison, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Right? That was a part of his becomingness. All that was part of his becomingness. But what happened? We fill the gap in our activity through a concept that's called ingenuity. What's ingenuity? I keep on refining my approach. Every time I do something and it doesn't work for me, it works on me. When it's working on me, here's what's saying. What the things that are working on me are saying, Myron, change your approach. Now you know what. People ask me all the time, like, Myron, you talk about how the fact that you went 18 months without making a sale when you first got started in sales, and then all of a sudden, when you made your first sale, within months, you became the top salesperson in your office, month after month after month after month after month. What happened? What was the difference? Well, the difference was I ran out of all the ways that wouldn't work to make a sale. All I had left were ways that would. And see, most people don't go through enough iterations of anything to discover the thing that would work. They attempt this thing, that thing, that thing, and they say, well, that didn't work. I think I'll go become somebody different and do something else. Wrong answer, but we do have some nice consolation prizes for you in the back. Actually, we don't. And then lastly, as I'm becoming more, and then I increase my capacity, and I begin doing more, there's still a gap in my property. And I don't know if you have. Yeah, I'm sure you do. You know how you think about multiple things at the same time that are going in the same direction? Does that concept make sense? Okay. So what happens is, like, when you start working on your becomingness gets some momentum, right? But your activity has either inertia or negative momentum. And your property because you've been like living in lack for so long. And that's not me condescending. I lived in lack for a very long time unnecessarily. So I either had inertia or I had negative momentum. And so what happens if you have inertia, in other words, you're not doing terrible, but you're not getting any better. You have inertia. An object at rest will remain at rest until unless it's acted upon by an outside force, right? But if your life is getting worse incrementally or exponentially, you have negative momentum. And so the outside force that impacts your activity is your beingness. You becoming the person is the force. You're going this way, this is going this way or standing still. When this hits this, it doesn't move it a lot initially, it just moves it a little. And you have to keep on attempting a new approach with ingenuity, and then all of a sudden you got momentum in your identity and you got momentum in your activity. And eventually, I like what my good friend Kenny Grant says. What does he say? Myron, I'm going to tell you something. Eventually, he's undefeated. Right? So eventually, what happens is your property changes directions. And once when you have like a gap in your property and you say, okay, I'd like this property to increase, you do that through intensity. This is how to be the best of the best. This is how you become the best. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a sport, it could be business, it could be singing, it could be musical instruments, it could be languages, it could be whatever. This is how you become the best. There are very few people in the world who have decided, I am going to be the best who ever played this game. I don't want to be the best so I can be better than other people. I want to be best. I want to be the best so I can be better than I've ever been. Perpetually. That's the point. And if we will apply these principles to our lives, we can be the best of the best. I hope that video helps you. Stay blessed by the best and utilize this by becoming more than you've been being. Thanks for watching.